Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker. On this episode of Law Weekly, we take a closer look at the long-engaged federalism question. We begin with a report on the many proposals to reform the governance structure. My guests, both senior advocates of Nigeria, share opposing views on the kind of restructuring the country needs. Also, we bring you highlights of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry into cases of police brutality and human rights violations committed by operatives of the dissolved Special Anti-Robbery Squad across the country. And we have some court sittings. The question of restructuring has been thrown up again, especially in the NSAS protest aftermath, as a way of addressing the teething problems facing the country. Now, while some say a simple way to restructure Nigeria is by devolving powers, others believe that what the country needs is competent leadership at all levels. It's a debate that did not start today, and at different times pitching the South against the North and vice versa. So whether it's the Igbo in the southeast who believe restructuring will guarantee confederation in the constitution, or the Yoruba in the southwest who want a restructuring that would take the country back to regionalism, in the south-south the push is for resource control.
Without a restructuring back to federalism, I have no hesitation in declaring that Nigeria's development will continue on a downward path.
We need to unbundle the federal government. We need to shorten the number of things that the federal government takes on because they don't have the capacity to handle the things that they have lumped on themselves in the constitution.
If we take politics out of consideration, there is every likelihood that a diligent implementation of the key recommendations of the conference will lead the nation out of the woods.
You can never get anything in this country, no matter what program you are doing, until you establish a federal system now.
Nigeria must restructure its present governance architecture.
Recently, the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum was not left out in the demand.
The evolution of Nigeria's federalism has not served our best interest, and it is not surprising that we have witnessed protests at every attempt at constitutional re-engineering. Two prominent examples were the 2005 Constitutional Reform Conference, convened by President Obasanjo's administration, and the 2014 National Conference at the instance of President Jonathan. In the two conferences, the delicate issue remains that of restructuring, often dubbed devolution of power, decentralization through federalism, and so on and so forth. But for how long can we continue to run away from this issue and continue to pretend that somehow it will resolve itself someday?
While the positions of regions in the south are not irreconcilable, at a similar forum, the governor of Kaduna State says the APC Committee on Federalism had made similar recommendations for rebalancing of the economy, with states getting more powers.
The APC Committee on Federalism recommended that the federation be rebalanced, with more powers and responsibilities devolved to the states. The committee also clarified that the federation is a relationship solely between the states and the federal government. The committee's recommendations also cover how the states can generate the resources that will fund their envisaged expanded burdens, responsibilities, and authority. This includes a holistic review of the share of federation revenues accruing to the states and federal government.
Other voices believe a careful mix of all suggestions should be considered.
There's clearly a need for restructuring. But I don't think that restructuring is an end or should be an end in itself. I think there's certain problems within our polity that restructuring will just move to another tier or another level. Looking at the dynamic of the youth, they seem to have been able to move beyond that stereotype of, this is a Yoruba thing, or this is an Igbo thing, or is an Hausa or a Middle Belt thing. And I think that's the only way this country is going to progress.
But what meaning does the man on the street give to restructuring?
Restructuring is when each state Each state will control the resources that they have, and at the end of the day, they pay to the federal authority. The only thing that will solve the problem of Nigeria is restructuring. There is no other solution apart from restructuring. If they don't restructure Nigeria, problem will still continue to be there.
Restructuring, devolution of powers, or true federalism. Whatever is decided, one thing is certain, that the voice of the people and the government must connect to arrive at an equilibrium that will meet the yearnings of all concerned.
Now, one senior lawyer believes that a simple way to restructure Nigeria is by devolving powers. In this next interview, senior advocate of Nigeria, Olise Agbakoba, gives his angle to the restructuring question, which he believes starts with rejigging the 98 items of power contained in both the executive and concurrent lists in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Nigeria is too, to use the word of scholars of federalism, centrifugal. There's a pyramid. Power is at the top in Abuja. There's nothing. And the items of power are spelled out in the Constitution, 98, and those items of power all belong to the federal government of Nigeria. If the federal government does everything, then what are the states doing? So it just makes sense to empower the states. And if you go back to history, the best opportunity we've ever had to manage diversity was 1963, because we had a vertical constitution that enabled all the regions, Eastern Nigeria, Western Nigeria, Northern Nigeria, and they had their three great development commissions, NNDC, WNDC, ENDC, all doing all sorts of things. That was Nigeria's best time. Then the coup came, and we had this unification of Nigeria, Decree number 38 of 1966, which unified Nigeria, because when the military took over, you know, the military has a hierarchy of center command. So they brought that into Nigeria. That caused the breakdown, led Ojukwu to Aburi with General Gowon. And they said, hey, let's think through whether this structure of unified command will work. All kinds of discussions about how do we get this right. And it's been going on and on. Obasanjo has done his own national conference. Abacha did his own. IBB did his own. Jonathan did his own. I was part of that Jonathan. And we are still where we are.
But some of the examples you've given are past examples. How does that apply now?
Because there are interests. Nobody likes to surrender power. You need to have a leader who can think in space and time, who says, no, these things are not working. All right, for instance, just not to say that Mr. Fashola is doing badly, but what makes him think that he can fix all Nigerian roads? Wouldn't it be easier if he focused on federal roads and allowed the state counterparts to do the state roads? Make sense? Why would the IG of police think that he can resolve all the, issues of crime, protection of lives and property in Nigeria? Wouldn't it be better if you had municipal police, for instance? So that, for instance, Lasma here can be upgraded to a municipal police. So I think in the centrifugal, arrangements we have, we lose sight of the potential of bringing on board 774 local governments and 36 state governments. That's the point about devolution. And since restructure, as I'm sure you know, has caused all sorts of tensions, people ask, what is restructure? The North has its own version of restructure, the South has its own version, and it's all talk. And I said, look, you know what? There's got to be something that we can do about this. There's a simple way. So what are the core of restructure? It's power, devolution. That's all. It's just sharing power. So why can't the National Assembly? This is probably the fourth National Assembly to review the Constitution and go nowhere. At the core of restructure is to give more powers to the states. Some say state police, some say fiscal federalism, some say solid minerals, as we now see in the North. Some are complaining, why is Zamfara taking all the oil, all the gold money, and the people from Niger Delta have their oil shared, all sorts of things. Why is VAT shared everywhere? So the only way to resolve this is to say, okay, let's look at the items of power, because that's what's causing the problem. The exercise of power on the exclusive list with 68 items and on the concurrent list with 30 items, so 98. But that concurrent is a very dangerous word because it means that both federal and state concur. But if the federal goes first, the state is out. So in real terms, the states have no power. So why don't you allocate them something? Is that difficult?
In your idea, your definition of devolution of powers, what then do the local governments get?
It's up to the federating states to determine what to do with the local governments. I believe the local governments are an internal matter for each state. The bigger issue is which unit should be federating. Because, a federation consists of units. So should it be the 6 geopolitical regions or would it be the 36? So that should be part of the conversation. The mistake we make in calling for a restructure is to assume we can fix Nigeria's constitutional problem overnight. We can't. The problem we face now is one of failing to manage diversity. So if we can get this devolution of powers thing right, pass a new legislation, then we have further challenges, we can deal with them. But for now, I think that the main thing in the mouths of everybody in Nigeria is restructure, which I prefer to call devolution of powers because it's neutral, it's non-aggressive, and it's something that I think anyone looking at it would agree. Why should the federal government issue a budget for primary health care? Should it matter for the local governments? The other day, there was a big debate in the National Assembly over employment, and Mr. Kayamo was on with the members of the National Assembly fighting over employment at the local government. Come on. I think the federal government should look at bigger issues: new energy policy, power, balancing the economy, growing the economy. That's for the federal government. The other little, minutiae, leave it for the states.
But is this administration responsive to some of these issues?
I would have wanted them to be more responsive. I begin to think that, yes, that might happen. The NSAS, Youth Revolution has taught us all, a good lesson, and it's a wake-up call that we must do something. Because at the heart of this, whether you call them hoodlums or whatever, I looked at it from the point of view of inequality. There's a guy, the world's leading professor of inequality. He's written 3 books, but I just refer to one, which is Capitalism and Inequality. When people suffer inequality, they are on the fringe, they are marginalized. And so when you look at some of the rampant, unexcusable destruction, you see some aggression beyond hunger. And I saw that. So part of what I hope the government will respond to, which I begin to see lots of activity, is how can we include? Because it's all about inclusion. Now, if you're going to include, it goes back to this restructure thing, because the federal government cannot employ all the youths. So those governments that have best skills in agriculture or in digitalization or whatever will now have the new space to employ or create the environment to enable the employment of 60 million, youths in Nigeria that have no hope. If we don't change the nature of our game, we're going into some serious trouble. Because you got to have where you will put 60 million people. The NSAS thing showed that we need to expand this economy. And we can't expand the economy by just one executive branch of government sitting in Abuja, excluding 36, excluding the 774 at the local government level. When all of these guys come into the political space, I think we'll have a better government, which I think is all what we want.
Another senior advocate, Jibrin Okutekpa, disagrees with devolution of powers with many question marks. Take a listen.
I understood those who are clamoring for restructuring to talk about devolution of power and decentralization of governance, so much so that the federal government should have less to do and much to be donated to the states and perhaps to the local government. But I have some question mark on that proposition because I do not see how effective and efficient such proposition will work if we refuse to restructure our character, refuse to restructure our being, our attitude, we refuse to restructure our respect for rule of law and due process. If we refuse to be bound by rule of law, due process, and if we continue the way we are doing when acquisition of power has become the means to an end, and people who are in power almost all the time invariably oppressing Nigerian people, then I will not be for such restructuring if we are not changing our orientation, our character, our attitude to work, and even creating institutions that works. So if you discover in this country, I do not see that our problem is in the nomenclature of the way government is run. I think our problem mainly is absence of leadership that will show the direction we should go, the propensities we have for disobedience to institutions and constituted authorities, and our propensity to even disrespect our law.
What you're suggesting, where has it worked? And don't you think that Nigeria, in its diverseness, richness, is quite complex in terms of finding a solution to implement?
I think what we lack in Nigeria, and as I said, is basically there is no respect for rule of law and due process. And where there are violations of our laws of the land, there are no sanctions because of the level of impunity in governance. So until we purge ourselves of the contempt we have for law and order and respect for institutions and do things the way it should be done in the overall interest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and not on the basis of our primordial partisan interests or on the basis of religious ownership or ownership of thieves and ownership of wrong. Even if we restructure Nigeria according to the local government you have, 774 local governments, you will still see the kind of things we are having in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Because if the 3 tiers of government keep to the departments allotted to them in the Constitution, and everybody is doing what he's supposed to do, and when there is a deviant or violation, then somebody is there to apply sanctions to it. Then we can talk about restructuring, superstructural restructuring. So to say, now say, okay, these things are working, we are now nationalistic, we can do things according to law and order. Then let us also see what we can do. Because if you restructure, are you going to restructure those who are stealing our commonwealth from this country? And mark you, even in the process of the NSAS, you can see 2 classes of Nigerian youth. Those who are ready to support the status quo were used, and those who want an end to impunity in Nigeria were demonstrating and doing what they needed to do within the ambit of the law.
Where do you see this change starting from? This change that you speak of?
It must start from you and I and those in authority to lead by example. If we don't lead by example and apply sanctions to disobedience to law and order, even if we restructure Nigeria, it will not work. We need attitudinal change, reorientation, and that's all we need. And once that happens, then you see development in all the structures of the society.
Let's take a peep into the various panel sittings across the country this week.
The Judicial Panel of Inquiry into allegations of police brutality and alleged abuses by the disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad SARS continues across the country. In the nation's capital, more witnesses have come forward to testify on the alleged police brutality meted out on them. At the third sitting of the Independent Investigation Panel, 2 cases came up for hearing as victims narrate how they were allegedly detained and tortured by officers of the defunct unit without access to justice. The panel has received over 140 petitions. In Lagos, the judicial panel established by the Lagos State government played back the closed-circuit TV footage from the October 20th Lekki shooting. At its sitting on Friday, the panel obtained footage of the incident from the Lekki Concession Company. The chairperson of the panel granted approval for the footage to be played after hearing from counsels. Earlier in the day, Mr. Additional Ogulano made an appearance for the NSAS protesters.
That it's because of NSAS protesters that all of us are here. The SARS abuse is because of NSAS protests. The Lekki incident shooting, NSAS protesters. It's just like university. Everything is about the students. Whether you call them vice chancellor, academic staff, union workers, NASU, whatever, it is because of the students. All of us here, including them, is because of NSAS protesters. My clients are not amorphous.
Why we are here today is just to register our displeasure. Oh yes.
Meanwhile, outside the panel sitting, a group of students under the auspices of National Association of Nigeria Students were protesting the killing of their fellow student, Onifade Pelumi, a 200-level student of the Department of History at Tai Solarin University of Education, Ogun State. He worked as an intern with an online television and was allegedly killed on October the 24th by the Lagos Task Force while covering an attempted burglary at the government facility in the Okwaba area of Agege. In Ogun State, the panel has received over 39 petitions from members of the public. The chairman of the panel in his opening remarks called for cooperation and understanding of all stakeholders, cautioning against unnecessary delay.
This panel is not a witch-hunting panel. We are not here to witch-hunt the police or police personnel or anyone at all. We're only a fact-finding panel. When we get the facts, we'll make our recommendations. This is not a trial court, and I want to urge lawyers who are here that we will not want to have technicalities delay our sitting.
In the southeast, Ebonyi State Judicial Panel of Inquiry heard the ordeal of a lawyer who claims he was beaten and arrested in a pool of his own blood by police officers while trying to secure bail for a client. He says he got judgment in his favor for the breach of his fundamental rights, but the police is yet to pay him.
One of the guards, by name Inspector Harrison Amy, who had earlier ordered me out of the station, came out again and met us where I was taking a question from the DPO's order. So he told me that he had earlier instructed me to go. What was I still doing there? I was still trying to tell him that one of the officers called me. So he didn't listen to me. What he did was to start beating me. Tore my trousers, as to be seen in the pictures that I annexed. So thereafter he ordered that I should be paraded before I would be taken to police headquarters.
Is that what you want to...
In Imo, the judicial panel held its inaugural sitting in Owerri, where the secretary of the panel says 4 petitions were submitted asking members of the panel to approach the panel within the time frame allotted to it. In Edo, the Judicial Panel of Inquiry says it received 24 petitions in one of the sittings. A petitioner, Sunday Akman, adopted his petition before the panel but could not answer questions from the panelists due to a hearing defect. His petition was adjourned till November the 11th, while another petitioner, Isaac Edo, asked the panel to look into the case of his missing son, allegedly arrested by the police command in Edo State in 2011. Niger State also joined the list of states that have activated panels of inquiry into allegations of police brutality. The chairman gave an overview of what to expect.
That's our program for now. Until next time, don't forget that you can catch this episode of the program and past episodes on our YouTube channel. I'm Minister Walker. Thank you for watching.